All right, Kelly, take a look here at Gen Z and how different it is politically from the rest of the age groups out there. So our new poll looks at this. Look, just start with the basic question, Donald Trump's job approval rating. And you can see here, Donald Trump not popular. This is among Gen Z. Gen Z particularly hostile when it comes to Donald Trump. Basically a 2-to-1 margin, disapprove over approve. And again, that is different than what we see with all adults nationally. With that group, Trump not that popular, but still it's only a 10-point gap between 45 approve, 55 disapprove. So there you go. When it comes to Trump, Gen Z, more hostile, more anti-Trump. How about the actions Trump is taking as president? Here he is, trade and tariffs. Again, not popular overall. Certainly that's the headline right here. Particularly unpopular, more acute among Gen Z. Look at that, 28-72 on that question. On the question basically of where the country is heading here. Again, are folks optimistic or pessimistic? Now, this one's interesting. There's a bit of context here. Overall, you look at this, 40% say right direction, 60% wrong direction. You say that's a pessimistic country. Certainly, by those numbers it is, but the context is this number, 40%, is actually a lot higher than we've seen in a long time. You know, in our own NBC poll, we had a similar number to this recently, and it was the first time in 2 decades it had been that high. A lot of that is Republicans, coming together really to say almost unanimously they think the country is on the right track. And again, among Gen Z, though, much more of a gap, 29-71. So we say Gen Z, it's more anti-Trump's policies, more liberal overall. But I think what's really interesting in these numbers, it's a particular part of Gen Z. It's the gender gap. We talk about it all the time in politics. It is so much more pronounced in this generation, in this young generation, Gen Z. So look at it this way. Go back to that question of Trump's job performance. Do you approve or disapprove? And actually, when you look at it by gender, men, 45-55, remember we showed you a minute ago, that's Trump overall. That's Trump nationally. That's when you put everybody in the poll, Trump's 45-55. Gen Z men are right in line with that. Where the country as a whole is, it's Gen Z women where Trump falls off the cliff. Look at this, 24-76. Look at the gap between those two groups. And now put this in further context right here, looking at the gender gaps in all the different generations. Again, look at this. This is Trump's approval rating now. We're just showing the approval rating. Again, 45% with Gen Z men. We just showed you that, 24% with Gen Z women. And then here's Trump's approval rating. You know, these are millennial men, Gen X men, boomers. You see 40s into the 50s, 40s here among women, millennials, Gen X, boomers. Wow, does that number stand out, that 24%. So within Gen Z, you're seeing women as much more liberal, much more progressive, much more anti-Trump than men, but also among all generations. This particular group right here is just much more liberal, much more progressive than you're going to see really anywhere else on this spectrum. And that rears its head any range of questions and issues we have in this poll right here. Again, you're seeing this is the number for all adults. This is the number for Gen Z men. This is the number for Gen Z women on. Do you have a favorable view of the Republicans? 44 nationally, 44 Gen Z men, falls off a cliff with women. Approve of how Trump's handling DEI, 44, 45. Down to 22. Look at this. Approval of Trump. You see the pattern. Agree on the question, there are only 2 genders. Do you agree or disagree? 71% overall agree. 69% of Gen Z men. Falls down to barely 50%. 51 Gen Z women. How about this question? Are you only a little or not at all proud to be an American? 22% nationally. 22% Gen Z men. Almost double that. Gen Z women. So we say Gen Z is more liberal, Kelly. It is, but it particularly is a gender gap. Women pushing the generation in that direction much more than men.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.